Welcome back. Now it's time to meet our second group of candidates this evening. One of them is missing in action, so we have three candidates for our second half of the show this evening. Let's meet the three. First up, we have Malcolm Dixon. He's a Dunedin retailer and his family has been involved in business, music and community initiatives for several generations. He's raised three children with his wife Margaret and has always lived in Dunedin. Rachel Elder is an employment consultant who's worked across the health, education, church, community and employment sectors. She believes she brings a wealth of knowledge and networks to help inform decision-making on council. And finally, Paul Hudson. Paul is a long-term city councillor with experience across all areas of the council's operations. He's also on the Otago Art Gallery Society Council and Regent Theatre Board and was a previous managing director of Cadbury Confectionery. Now, as with our first group this evening, each candidate will have 30 seconds to explain why they deserve your vote. That'll be followed up by a few questions from myself. So I'll start with, on the left of the panel again, to Malcolm. Tell us why you're standing for the Dunedin City Council this election.
Thank you, David. I'm standing, this is my second standing for City Council. I stood in the last elections. I'm standing on the ticket of economic development, our unique lifestyle, our education facilities that we have, and our coastal area that we need to address. We've got some major problems there. Also, a safe city. Sorry.
That's right. Thank you, Malcolm. We'll come to you. Now, obviously, being a business owner and involved in various community initiatives, what do you think you'd bring to the council table?
Certainly some business acumen, I would have thought. I'm very keen on economic development. I think Dunedin has been languishing for some time now, and we need to move forward and attract new investment and employment into Dunedin.
Now, you're saying you stood at the last election, missed out there, but do you think things have improved under the past council?
We've certainly improved a lot of our amenities that we have in the city, but we haven't improved in terms of our employment options and investment.
So what do you think is needed?
We need to be more proactive in attracting investment here. We have to make it easier to do business in Dunedin and adopt a better approach and a collaborative approach with businesses wanting to establish here.
Excellent. We'll hear more from you later in the show, Malcolm Dixon.
Thank you.
Coming to Rachel Elder, tell us first why you're standing for election in the Dunedin City Council.
Hi, my name is Rachel Elder. I'm standing as an independent for the Central Ward. For the past 30 years, I have worked over a number of sectors, including health, education, church, community and employment. I'm standing because as an employment consultant, I see many hurting individuals because there's not enough jobs here in Dunedin. My vision? To encourage and support job generation, wealth creation and economic success.
Now, Rachel, employment's obviously a big issue for you. Is this something that you think the council should be directly involved in leading?
Well, I believe we have to talk to business about that. I believe that we have to talk to them about what they see as the barriers so that we can be more specific about targeting those. So I believe in more red carpet, less red tape. I do believe there's some opportunities on the table presently which I think we should take advantage of.
Do you think the council has been taking advantage of those opportunities as they've come along over the past term?
Well, I think they're working on the hotel presently, and I'm really glad about that because it would create hundreds of jobs if it went ahead, and we've lost 5,600 post-primary manufacturing jobs in the last 5 years. That's the highest in New Zealand.
Rachel Elder, we'll hear more from you later in the show as well. And finally, in this section, Paul Hudson, sitting councillor. Paul, tell us why you're standing for re-election in the Dunedin City Council.
I'm standing for re-election, but I believe there's still an enormous job to do in completing some of the projects that we've already started. And I have concern that we've lost 5 very experienced councillors from this election, and we need to keep the experience and the motivation within council. My focus is still going to be on job creation and tourism. I believe they're the 2 areas that we will have the opportunity of success.
Well, Hudson, obviously, as you say, there's quite a number of people standing down, retiring from the council. What's the concern, what's the worry if it's an entirely new council? You believe some experience is needed?
I believe experience is always needed, but particularly when some of the very experienced councillors have stepped back, it's going to be hard for the new councillors to pick up the roles that they were working in. It will be possible, but it'll take time.
Now, criticism of council always comes up. How do you take criticism of council? Do you think you have been doing a good job as a council over the last 3 years?
I think there's a lot of very good things have happened over the last 3 years. There are some things that I believe should have happened that haven't happened.
What sort of things would you like to see improved?
Certainly I'd like to see the Logan Park redevelopment to have continued through. It's one of the most important sporting complexes in New Zealand, relating as it does to the Polytech and the university. A plan was there, but the funding has been pulled, so we haven't been able to complete the proposals that we discussed with all of the sporting organisations.
Paul Hudson, we'll hear more from you later in the show too. That's our initial briefings from our 3 candidates for the second half this evening. We'll be back in a moment with questions to the 3 candidates. Back in a moment. Welcome back to Local Body 2013. We're with our second group of candidates this evening, standing for your vote in the Dunedin City Council elections in the Central Ward. Let's start with a question to all candidates. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing Dunedin City over the next 3 years? I'll start with Malcolm Dixon.
Thank you, David. I think what I've been standing on is economic development is the biggest challenge that we have at the present time. We've got a diminishing number of effective ratepayers with an increasing infrastructure that we have to pay for, and effectively our population hasn't increased in some generations in real terms. So I think adopting some new strategies and some new attitudes to investors and business coming to the city is one of the most important things at this stage.
Rachel Elder, you mentioned employment in your opening. Do you see that as one of the biggest challenges for the city over the next 3 years?
Well, given that we've lost 5,600 post-primary manufacturing jobs in the last 5 years, I believe so. And I think one of the big challenges is, one, to look at incoming investment, and like I say, the hotel is one of those, and how we might work with that. And I believe we have to work with all comers. The other thing is, as long as the exploration offshore is safe, and it is 60 k's out from shore, and it's 90% sure it's gas, then I believe we need to be looking at the opportunity of taking those jobs up in Dunedin and supporting that, because in fact it's going out there anyway, and Invercargill or Timaru will get those jobs rather than us. So though I believe we need to be looking at making the most of opportunities and working with business on looking at the barriers, and also spending more on marketing.
Excellent. Number of challenges. Finally, to Paul Hudson in this question. You're already on council, but what do you see as the challenges for the next 3 years?
I think the major challenge is the provision of jobs for people in Dunedin. If you've got a job, you've got income, you can live a decent life, and that's not happening in many sectors of our community at the moment. The jobs, I think, are likely to be in education and in tourism rather than manufacturing. We are losing an enormous opportunity at the moment by not working together to encourage international students to come to Dunedin, and the same with tourists. New Zealand seems to be the focus for Aucklanders, but they don't come south of Christchurch since the earthquakes, and we've got to change that perception.
Let's continue with that. We've got a very business-minded panel here this session. Paul Hudson, I'll stay with you. What role do you see the council as playing in Dunedin's economic growth and regional development? Just to expand on that, do you see the council as leading by investing or leading by policies and by doing?
Well, it leads by investing in several areas, but the reality is we need to lead by doing and encouraging and discussing and agreeing the pathway that we need to work forward in. And there are several ideas there at the moment that I think are very important for Dunedin and will generate extra employment and extra economic development. The other thing that we need to do, of course, is to maximise the benefits from the council company. And this year, for City Forest, they're returning a profit of 14 million. and that's very, very important for the economic health of this city.
Excellent. Malcolm Dixon, a local business owner for many years. Tell us, what role do you see the council is playing in growing economic growth?
I think council and the council machine have to work together to try and ease the way through a lot of the consent processes. I don't mean do away with consents, but certainly work to make it easier for business to work with council. So we really need a collaborative approach instead of developers creating a model for something and then being knocked back at the door. So I think that's very important. Council needs to become involved at an earlier time when there's developments coming up. The message I'm getting from a lot of people who look at projects within Dunedin is that it's very, very difficult.
Rachel, you touched on this as well earlier, but do you see council as investing directly or is it leading?
Well, I mean, council does have a number of investments, like Paul said, like the forestry and others, and I believe we need to be running those very efficiently and being at the cutting edge of best practice in those areas. I believe the consents process needs to be worked on in the sense of it being a collaborative approach rather than a sort of oppositional kind of approach, so we actually work alongside people to make things happen. I also think that we need to probably spend a little bit more on marketing Dunedin and its assets. We're an affordable, accessible and beautiful city, and we should be trying to market to like Auckland or some of the other places where it's very expensive to set up business. So I believe that some of that needs to happen. We need to attract students, we need to attract tourists, we need to attract businesses and events.
Excellent. Now we'll continue with this, and Rachel's touched on this evening. The 5-star hotel and apartment development that was proposed for the waterfront, it was suggested when it was first proposed that the city would roll out the red carpet, not the red tape. Malcolm Dixon, I'll start with your end this time. Is the council really welcoming red tape free for potential new businesses? You've touched on that with consents. Is it council, are they welcoming enough?
I believe not, and it's not a criticism, it's just that the process often stands in the way. So, as I mentioned earlier, I think council needs to be involved a lot earlier in the development of these issues to make sure that things like heights and other issues are taken care of in the planning process so that we can see these things move forward a lot quicker.
Rachel, is the red carpet rolled out? Should we be sending more signals, better signals to investors and businesses in the north that we are a welcoming city?
Well, I agree with Malcolm, actually. If we send the message out that, like, if you want to come and do business here, we will support you right through the process, then some of the things that have happened around the 5-star hotel mightn't have happened, and that hasn't been the case. I do believe we do need a 5-star hotel. I've talked to Ali Copeman. She's a conference organiser, and she said we're very short on that kind of accommodation, and I believe we need to use our facilities well in Dunedin, our conference facilities, our events facilities. I think it's a really good mix. But no, I think we need to start quite early in the piece.
Excellent. And finally, Paul Hudson, for this section, you've been on council. Do you think council was welcoming enough? Could things be done better or improved in terms of welcoming or inviting new businesses to the city?
I think the city does very well, but the reality is we're governed by the Resource Management Act and Council's district plan. And certainly there can be exceptions to both of those, but they can only be achieved by cooperation between the parties. And sometimes the requirements of applicants are very inflexible. I support the hotel. I think we need to find an appropriate site for it, perhaps where the harbour molars are, which has got a magnificent view down the harbour. And the council staff are having ongoing discussions with the hotel developers, and I hope they'll be successful.
Excellent. Thank you to our panel this evening. One more section to go, and we'll address more questions to our 3 candidates this evening. We'll be tackling the issues of cycleways and long-term debt. Back in a moment. Welcome Welcome back to Local Body 2013 with our second group of candidates this evening standing in the Central Ward. Rachel Elder, I'll come to you first on this question. Question for the whole panel though. There's been a big increase on spending on cycleways around the city in the past term with more to come, potentially at the cost of some inner city parking. How do you feel about that?
Well, I love biking. I bike to McAndrew Bay when I've got time, and I bike around town as well. And the biggest issue really on biking around town is people opening their car doors. So safety is an issue, and I believe we do need to spend on it. But I think we have to look at our whole budget when we're spending. I would like to see less parks taken away because parking is an issue. And I believe we actually probably need a bit more consultation because it seems to be going through quite fast. So maybe more consultation on that. But certainly the option of a two-way cycleway looks better to me than a one on each side, which would be 400 parks. The 200 park looks a lot better.
Thank you. Paul Hudson, the increase in interest in spending on cycleways, do you see that as a positive move and for the future?
I see it as a positive move, but most people don't recognise the fact that 2/3 of the cost will be covered by transit grants to council, so it's not as large an expenditure as people suggest. I think we do need it. The State Highway 1 North-South pair cycle lanes are going out for consultation after the council meeting today, and I hope we get appropriate feedback for that. I would really like to see the cycleways completed down the Peninsula side of the harbour and the Port Chalmers side of the harbour, because I believe they would lead to enormous tourism potential.
Excellent. And Malcolm, cycleways in the city, potential of some loss of inner city parking. How would businesses feel about that?
Not very happy, I wouldn't think. I support cycleways, very much so. I do not support cycleways on state highways or mixing cycleways with heavy traffic, stock trucks, logging trucks and that sort of thing. It's a recipe for disaster. I do support the cycleway concept, but I have actually done my own research on the numbers of people actually using the cycleways during peak hour traffic in the mornings, and there's very few people are using them to commute. So certainly they're a great thing to have. I support the concept, but I think we need to be more careful about where we place those people.
Right. Now, tackling a related issue, obviously spending is an issue. The Council's large long-term debt has been mentioned by many candidates in this election campaign. Given the spending restrictions that the Council is under, what projects for our panel would you like to see the Council to pursue over the next few terms? I'll start with Paul Hudson on the end. Paul, what do you see as, given the tight budget restrictions, what are the spending priorities?
I'll just step back a little bit. The Council debt is well under control. The majority of the debt is within the council companies, and that's where it should be, because companies do need to borrow to purchase the assets in the first place.
It's still in the hundreds of millions.
It is, and it's within accepted and expected levels. There are no major projects that council needs to pursue as far as capital spend on buildings over the next period of time, but one of the issues we will have to face up to over this triennium is what we're going to do about removing stormwater emissions to the greatest extent that we can, and that certainly will be a very expensive project that we will have to undertake.
Malcolm Dixon, council debt, both the debt itself and also, as Paul's touched on, the holding company's debt. What priorities are you focused on given that limited spending pool?
Well, I'm very keen to see our coastal area restored. That's a major for me, and it's firstly, it's a very good, a very big tourist attraction. There are some issues coming up with sea level and that middle beach area which needs to be reconstructed. And I think if we can create a coastal park, if you like, from between St Clair and out to John Wilson Memorial Drive, I think that would be a major advantage for the city, which is going to have to be done anyway.
Rachel, obviously the Council's targeted rates 4 to 3% to keep them in that sort of level. Not too much more spending can be added. What do you see as the priorities?
Well, I heard that we have a AA rating with Standard & Poor's, so that sounds good to me. And I believe a top priority for me is that we need to actually market Dunedin and attract more people. So I would like to see a citywide and coordinated approach to marketing Dunedin to the rest of New Zealand, and in fact the world, because we are a beautiful and talented city and everything's accessible. I believe that that would help create more growth. So that again would improve visitors numbers, that would improve student numbers, but also I'd love to see us putting a package together to attract businesses to Dunedin. Maybe have a special conference up or something in Auckland selling what we've got to offer.
Excellent. For our panel, now some voters have told us that they're looking for some bold new thinking from the next council. For our three candidates this evening, what's the one bold plan or idea that you would like to promote if elected to council? Paul Hudson, I'll start with you.
I'd like to see the Tau University, the Polytech and Dunedin schools all working together in a coordinated approach to bring overseas students to Dunedin. The numbers that are coming here are falling, and that's a real opportunity for the city and the opportunity to provide a large number of jobs.
Excellent. Malcolm Dixon, a bold new plan or idea for the city?
Well, I agree very much with Paul on the education scene. I believe Dunedin could be the education capital of New Zealand. We've got such a unique and really very user-friendly campus area, and like Paul, I think attracting overseas students and students from within New Zealand to Dunedin is going to be a major. I also want to see us promote our unique lifestyle. You know, we've got an amazing infrastructure in Dunedin that really is underutilised, and so we have a unique lifestyle opportunity for a lot of people here in Dunedin, so I'd like to see that promoted.
Excellent. And finally, Rachel Elder, the final thought for this evening, a big, bold idea for the city?
Well, because I'm working in jobs and growth, I would actually like to see all the ITOs be in one house near the Polytech, because in fact a lot of our young people don't know where to go for the ag ITO, the electrical ITO, industry training organisations. So there's a one-stop shop for youth to go to and perhaps even get career advice initially as well. And I'd also love for a whole lot of businesses to go on a tour of the region, because there's a lot of employment and business opportunities. Gore has the second highest business growth in New Zealand per head of capita out of the dairy industry, and I think there's lots of opportunities out there for business in Dunedin to go on.
Excellent. We're out of time there. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you to our three panellists in the second half this evening, Malcolm Dixon, Rachel Elder and Paul Hudson. Thanks for your time this evening. And thank you for joining us tonight. Remember, we'll be here every weeknight meeting the candidates. You can also catch repeat screenings of the show at the weekends and in the weeks leading up to the close of postal voting. Join me again tomorrow night at 7:30 when we hear from a second group of candidates standing for your vote in Dunedin's main central ward. Remember, it's your votes who will decide who runs the city for the next 3 years.
Thank you.